They were playing Le Freak by Chic when my phone buzzed. Bass-heavy floor vibrating, glasses clinking. I was seated in the VIP lounge front row center, the same place I'd occupied for a decade's worth of Paris fashion weeks. A model passed in something sculptural and cruelly sharp. People applauded. I looked at my phone. We need younger energy. Nothing personal. 6 words. Sent by my CEO, Kellen Rhodes. No punctuation. No signature. Just that. The screen's glow flickered against my hand. For a moment, I thought I misread it. That the fatigue, the lighting, the champagne, something had distorted the message. But no. There it was again. Clear, brutal. 12 years, gone in a breath. I didn't move, didn't flinch. I blinked once, took a sip of champagne and smiled, like the woman who belonged in this seat. Because I had. I'd helped build Elysia into the pillar it was. I gave up sleep, relationships, entire holidays, reshaping a dusty European house into a modern powerhouse. And Kellen, polished, surgically symmetrical, eternally. 38 had decided I no longer matched the aesthetic. All around me, laughter floated through the air like perfume. A woman in head-to-toe archival Dior leaned in and whispered something to her companion. They both giggled. I couldn't hear it, but I knew the cadence. I'd heard that laugh in boardrooms, the sound of irrelevance being reassigned. The worst part I knew. Deep down, I'd felt the shift weeks ago. Shorter meetings, board materials sent late, mentions of fresh vision tossed around like rose petals. But I didn't think they'd do it like this. As the finale began, lights dimming in amber haze, I felt a subtle movement to my left. Someone had been watching. A quiet presence, crisp cuff brushing my sleeve. He leaned just enough for his voice to reach me, no louder than a thought. You took that well. Most would have cried or left. I turned. Rhys Calderon, CEO of House Lenoir. Unsmiling. Still. Curious. I don't storm out, I said. Good, he replied, finishing his water. Because if you're available, I'd like to talk. I didn't answer, not yet. The show was still going, and I'd just become the story. The next morning, Rhys didn't text. He didn't email. He sent a handwritten note delivered by someone in all black at my hotel door. The envelope was heavy. Inside, a time, a location, and a single sentence. Not a proposal, a conversation. We met in a private garden behind a limestone atelier near Canal Saint-Martin. No branding, no press. Just 2 chairs, coffee, and a man who didn't waste words. He didn't ask how I was. Didn't mention Kellen's text or the ripple it had made. He simply said, "They'll spin you as unstable. Emotional, difficult to work with." He was right. I'd already received 2 checking-in texts from junior PR associates who never used to know my name. The kind you send when you've been told to log concern. I'm not looking for revenge, I said. Good, Rhys replied, sliding a single folder toward me. I'm looking for reinvention. We're expanding into the US. We need vision. And you already changed the game once. He wasn't offering me a job. He was offering me a platform, full creative direction, build the team from scratch, rewrite the rules. Your terms, he said, your tempo. I didn't agree on the spot. I wanted the silence. I wanted 3 days to wake up and see if the sting still burned. It did. But the bitterness had hardened into clarity. By Friday, we signed the deal. No public statement, not yet. The ink was barely dry when I received a call from Marcus Lynn, CEO of North Current, a luxury group with 78 hours in seasonal contracts. I'd onboarded them myself 6 years ago. His voice was quiet, calm. We won't be renewing with Elysia. The heart left when you did. He didn't ask where I'd gone, but he already knew. I thanked him, hung up, and then sat alone in my apartment, feeling the echo of a door I hadn't even realized I'd been waiting to walk through. The next morning, I boxed up the last of my Elysia notebooks and placed them in storage. There was no need to revisit what I'd already outgrown. The Elysia building looked the same from the outside, steel glass, clean lines, like a fortress of modernity. But inside, the temperature had changed. I stepped into the lobby and felt it immediately, the 2 long glances, the sudden silences. Security still greeted me by name, Reflex. But the badge they handed over was labeled Visitor. Upstairs, my office had been scrubbed clean of identity. No framed stills from past campaigns, No sketches pinned to corkboards. No scent of amber incense I used to light at 4 p.m. sharp. Just 3 cardboard boxes labeled Ray. No note, no thank you. Not even a sticky tab left behind. HR smiled like she'd practiced in the mirror. She gestured to the forms. "We're framing this as a mutual decision," she said. "We're not," I replied, pen already moving. "Well, that's how it's being positioned publicly." I slid the forms back toward her. "Tell Kellen if he's going to erase someone, he should at least be original." She blinked. "Excuse me, never mind." On my way out, I paused in front of my old door. The nameplate was still there. Worn brass, my last name, etched in serif font. I brushed my fingers across it once, then let it go. That evening, Tribeca felt quieter than usual. Or maybe I was just finally tuned to it. Reese met me in a private design atelier tucked behind an old bookshop. The ceilings were high, the air heavy with wool cedar and quiet purpose. He poured black coffee into a matte ceramic cup and passed it to me like an offering. No toast, no celebration. Not celebration, he said, reading me. Preparation. We didn't talk strategy that night. We talked structure. We talked bones. What could be salvaged? What had to be burned? Reese listened. That's what struck me. He listened without interruption, without looking at his watch. By the time I left, a layout of the new studio was already sketched on a napkin. I folded it, slipped it into my coat pocket, and walked into the night. The wind had picked up, but so had I. I didn't issue a statement. No curated LinkedIn post. No vague announcement about new horizons. That's not how real power moves. It doesn't broadcast. It builds. I started with Jordana Less, the stylist behind half the red carpets that mattered. She picked up on the second ring. "Seraphine," she said before I could speak. "Thank God, I've been waiting." She didn't ask what happened at Elysia. She didn't need to. She only asked, "What are you doing next?" I told her, and she laughed, not out of disbelief, but relief. Finally, something real. Next, I called Luis Antelmo, who ran those 2 impossible boutiques in Miami. The ones people whispered about but could never get into without a name. I heard the rumors, he said. And I hoped they were true. By the end of the call, he'd agreed to pause his next Elysia delivery. "I'm not interested in branding by algorithm," he said. "I want soul again." Last was Noor Stratton. We'd only met twice in person, but she'd been quietly investing in fashion's fringes for years. Aspen Home's minimalist taste, maximal influence. When I told her I was building something new, she replied, "Good. I've been waiting to bet on you, not your logo." By Friday, 2 boutique contracts with Elysia had evaporated. No loud exits, no scandal, just absence. Kellen would notice. Maybe not today, but he'd feel the cold draft by next week. I sat across from Riss in the design studio, reviewing early material concepts, deep slates, architectural pleats, functional asymmetries. He didn't speak much, but when the reports came in about the lapsed contracts, he glanced at me over the rim of his coffee. This is how kingdoms fall, inch by inch. I didn't nod, didn't smile, just turned the page and kept going. We weren't in a rush. Elysia wouldn't crumble overnight, but the stitching was loosening, and I'd always been good with thread. It started with whispers, then reposts, then a politely vague industry blog citing unconfirmed internal sources. They said I had become difficult, that I'd lost my edge, that I was struggling emotionally in the final months. The kind of language that feels clinical on the surface, but is designed to cut deep. Unstable, erratic, burned out. I didn't answer any of it. Not the thinly veiled sympathy texts. Not the calls from curious colleagues. I knew the shape of a smear when I saw one. I'd helped clean them up for others more times than I could count. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled together every piece of truth they'd left behind. I had emails, dates, and threads where I was clearly excluded from decision chains I used to lead. Board memos never sent to me. Calendar invites where strategy alignment was discussed. At the exact moment I was scheduled to speak on a global panel. They'd wanted me out long before the text. The only mistake they made was thinking I wouldn't keep records. One afternoon, I got a message from Lila Meeks, a journalist I'd mentored years ago when she was still writing for the StyleNet intern blog. They're trying to preempt the narrative she wrote. I know it's messy, but if you want to speak off record, I didn't reply. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't need to speak. Not yet. The proof was already forming a quiet storm. As I filed the documents into a clean labeled folder on my desktop, I whispered to myself, I'm not unstable. I was just inconvenient. The kind of inconvenient they couldn't control anymore. The kind that builds things instead of bending. And the more they tried to rewrite me, the more obvious it became that they were afraid I'd do the one thing they couldn't stop. Keep going. The second client left on a Tuesday. A wellness fashion hybrid in San Francisco with modest revenue but powerful reach. Quietly professionally, they withdrew from Malaysia's spring showcase. By Thursday, a partner brand from Milan, one I'd personally helped sign during a whirlwind pitch in a rain-soaked gallery 3 years ago, suspended negotiations. Internal realignment, they said. But I could read between the lines. Kellen could too. That afternoon, I received a message from him. Short, forced, casual. Can we talk? No lawyers. Just you and me. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to talk about. He'd made sure of that. Reese didn't ask how I felt about it. He simply handed me a summary report of the Milan delay and said, they'll escalate. Not because they're right, but because they're cornered. He was right again. The next morning, Lenoir's legal team received a cease and desist from Malaysia. Claims of client interference, misappropriation, defamation. I read the document twice. Then I laughed. I didn't laugh because it was funny. I laughed because it was predictable. The playbook never changes when men like Kellen start losing. They don't ask why. They just start pointing fingers. I walked over to my desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out the drive. Inside, archived emails showing I'd been removed from internal communications 6 weeks before Fashion Week. A screenshot of a board calendar invites strategic redirection sent to every C-level except me. Time-stamped project files showing the brand was preparing to replace me while I was still leading their global campaign. I kept receipts, I said, sliding the drive across the table to Riss. He looked at me and nodded. Nothing more. I didn't need revenge. I needed facts, and I had them. We would respond carefully, thoroughly, not to fight, but to prove when someone burns the bridge you built by hand, the last thing they get is silence. Especially when you know how to build something stronger on the other side. The headline landed on a Monday morning like thunder in a quiet gallery. Too old for runway, the truth behind Seraphine Ray's exit. ModeShift didn't use my name in vain. They used it with precision. Anonymous sources, leaked emails, meeting transcripts, memos with my name conspicuously missing. The timeline was clear. I hadn't stepped down. I hadn't burned out. I had been carved out piece by piece by the very people who once applauded me for saving their legacy. They didn't call it ageism, but the subtext screamed. Fresh vision, modern energy, evolving tone. I read the article alone in the corner of the Lenoir studio while the team worked around me. Threads buzzed. Fabric rustled. No one interrupted. By noon, Nahrakar She Built It was trending. People dug up interviews I'd done years ago. Clips where I'd spoken about mentorship craft, the long game of brand loyalty, one clip in particular where I said, we don't just shape the narrative, we are the narrative if we're not careful. They turned it into a reel. It went viral in under 3 hours. Kellen issued a statement that afternoon through a junior PR rep. Words like deep respect, collaborative departure, and mutual evolution tried to gloss over the fracture. It backfired. That night, someone leaked an audio file. Kellen's voice, clear, smug, and sharp. She's a legacy branding risk. We can't grow with nostalgia. The quote was time-stamped a week before the text he sent me at the runway. I didn't leak it. I didn't have to. The industry had found its voice, and for once it was speaking up before the headlines went cold. Reese didn't say much, but I saw the gleam of satisfaction in his expression. Not gloating, just confirmed. Later that evening, a message popped up from a luxury department chain I hadn't worked with in 5 years. We'd love to discuss new placement opportunities. We're rethinking direction. And just like that, silence became currency. The kind that buys your way back into every room they once shut behind you. The cloisters had never looked like this. Marble archways glowed under amber light, and a string quartet echoed off stone like something sacred. The garden smelled of rosemary and rain. Every detail had been intentional, nothing flashy, just purpose stitched into elegance. I stood near the edge of the courtyard, not announced, not introduced. People turned anyway. They always do when something shifts. Reese waited until dessert was cleared. Then he stepped onto the terrace and lifted his glass. Tonight, he said, we unveil the new vision of House Lenoir. Not a rebrand, not a pivot. A redefinition led by Seraphine Ray. He said nothing else. The applause didn't roar, it rolled. Quiet at first, then gaining weight. I didn't smile. I stood still, letting it wash over me, not like validation, but confirmation. The work had already begun long before tonight. When the crowd settled, they came. Not all at once, in measured steps. A brand director from Tokyo bowed and asked to meet in the morning. A PR head from Milan, who once wouldn't return my calls, handed me her card and said I was wrong. I see it now. Even former colleagues approached, some sheepish, some hollow-eyed. They shook my hand too long, said too little. And then it came. My phone buzzed in my clutch. We need to talk. I'm being dragged into board hearings. Please just talk. Kellen, I didn't respond. I slipped the phone back in place and turned toward a young designer adjusting the collar of her guest jacket. She looked up at me like I was more blueprint than person. I asked her name. She told me softly. Then asked, is it always this quiet right before it shifts? No, I said. Most of the time it's loud and clumsy, but this is earned. I walked inside past candlelight and quiet cameras toward the future I'd already started designing. Later that night, a man from a global luxury group asked if I'd consider a creative council seat. I told him to send the brief. And the next morning, the silence broke again. This time with an offer I never saw coming. The envelope arrived by courier. No return address, just my name printed in sharp, centered lettering. Inside, a letter from Kellen's legal team. Settlement terms, confidentiality clauses, a non-disparagement agreement. A generous figure attached to my silence. It was clean. Too clean. I scanned every line, then set it down beside my coffee and forwarded it to Riss and my attorney with 3 words, respectfully declined. Proceed as planned. I didn't need hush money. I had my voice. And now, finally, people were listening. 3 days later, another leak surfaced. Not from me, not from Lenoir. A former executive assistant, anonymous but meticulous, shared internal memos, Kellen mocking junior staff in meetings, calling them style-challenged interns with TikTok brains. Another document showed he'd manipulated quarterly growth numbers before the board review. One email was timestamped the morning after I was cut. He'd titled it, Phase 2 Brand Evolution. Minus distractions. They attached one of my performance reviews, backdated with comments clearly edited post-submission. The board didn't wait. By end of day, Kellen was suspended, pending investigation. I didn't say anything publicly. Didn't like posts, didn't repost articles. I was in the Lenoir studio by 7:15 a.m. the next morning, sitting cross-legged on the floor, sketching shoulder lines on scrap vellum. My new team filtered in slowly. Young, seasoned, some quiet, some sharp, all brilliant. Someone asked, "So, what are we chasing this season?" I looked up, pencil still in hand. "We're not chasing anything," I said. "We don't match trends. We start new truths." They nodded, then went to work. There was no ego in the room. Just fabric form and the feeling that maybe this time we were building something that didn't need validation to stand. Later that afternoon, a mood board was pinned beside mine. Heavy contrast, unexpected textures, an edge that made the room pause. I didn't touch it. Just left a sticky note that read, "Bold is the new necessary." And then I walked toward the light coming through the windows, already thinking about the next campaign. The Brooklyn studio hums like a hive, alive with the rhythm of creation. Swatches scatter across long tables, and pinned Polaroids dangle from mood boards in organized chaos. Laughter rises from the far corner where someone's adjusting hem lengths. A new concept sketch slides across the floor like a dare. I walk slowly, not to supervise, but to witness. This isn't mine in the way Elysia once was. This is something better, shared, evolving, unafraid. No one calls it Ray & Co. There's no logo with my initials. But when a pattern stands out or a cut disrupts expectations, I hear it. That's Ray's concept. Not as credit, as lineage. A junior stylist, no older than 22, stops me between fittings. Her hands are full of garment clips, her eyes wide and unguarded. "What's the biggest lesson you've learned?" she asks. I pause, thinking it deserves more than a rehearsed line. They'll take everything I say, your hours, your vision, even your voice, then still call you replaceable. But getting replaced doesn't mean you're finished. She waits. It means I continue. You get to start over with your own name. She nods, quiet, fierce. The lights dim in Studio B. The shoot is about to begin. A model steps onto the white set in a slate gray coat with asymmetrical seams and hand-beaded cuffs. Designed by Mara, 24, brilliant, once-made gowns from shower curtains in a dorm basement. I walk up, adjust the collar slightly, and smooth a ripple at the waist. She watches me like it matters. It does, I tell her. The camera clicks. A flash. Another. No applause. Just breath and shudder, the work speaking. I step back, watching the team scattered and sure, already moving toward the next shot. They thought they'd written my final chapter, but I was just changing pens.